A judge was about to deliver a sentence when something happened that paralyzed the entire courtroom. What a 5-year-old girl did with a blue rosary in the middle of the hearing left everyone in shock. A miracle of the Virgin Mary that began at the most unlikely moment and revealed something no one expected. But before we continue, leave a comment saying where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I'd love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. You know, that kind of person who works so much they forget how to live. William Reynolds was exactly that. 54 years old, a federal judge in Boston for 23 years, the kind of man who walked into a room and silence fell like a blade. Not exactly out of fear, but out of respect mixed with something colder. His routine never changed. Woke up at 5 a.m., black coffee, no sugar, at the office by 6:30. Files stacked high on the desk until the letters began to dance before his eyes. Lunch? A sandwich his secretary left on the corner of the desk, which he ate without tasting. He slept little. 4, maybe 5 hours a night, the rest of the time, working. Always working. Judge Reynolds, you really should get some tests done, his secretary Margaret would say at least once a month. That chest pain you've been feeling, it's nothing, he cut her off. Just fatigue. But it wasn't just fatigue. The pain had started 3 months earlier. Small at first, a tightness in his chest when he climbed stairs. A sharp sting when he stood up too fast. He ignored it. Always ignored it. After all, William Reynolds didn't have time to be sick, didn't have time for weakness. Divorced for 8 years. His ex-wife, Sarah, had tried. God knows she had tried. You chose your work, she said the day she signed the papers. His daughter, Rebecca, had been 18 when she stopped answering his calls. 24 now. 6 years without speaking to her, 6 years without hearing her voice. He told himself it was fine, that some people were simply made for loneliness. Thursday, April 14th. The day began like any other. William arrived at the courthouse at 7 in the morning, 3 hours before the hearing, enough time to review the day's cases. The first one was simple. Rachel Miller, 32 years old, charged with document fraud, documents with her signature, a witness confirming, a weak defense. Guilty, obviously guilty, or so it seemed. At 10 a.m., the courtroom was full, lawyers, clerks, assistants. William entered, and everyone stood. He sat. Rachel was seated at the defendant's table, hands trembling, eyes red. Her public defender, Michael Foster, looked exhausted, probably juggling 40 cases like this one. Behind her, in the gallery, her mother, Dorothy Miller, held the hand of a little girl, Emma, 5 years old, brown hair in braids, light blue dress. The prosecution presented its case. 15 minutes of arguments William already knew by heart. The defense tried, Foster really tried, but there wasn't much to work with. Your Honor, Foster began, my client denies signing the documents in question. She claims that, Mr. Foster, William interrupted, your client had access to the documents, benefited from the transactions, and was in a position of knowledge. The evidence is clear. Foster opened his mouth to argue, but closed it again. He knew it was useless. Anything further? No, Your Honor. William took the papers with the sentence he had prepared that morning. It was standard, fair, by the law. Very well. Rachel Miller, please stand. Rachel stood. Her legs barely held her up. Mrs. Miller, this court finds you. And then it happened. The pain. It wasn't like before. Not pressure. Not a twinge. William tried to keep speaking. The words came out, jumbled. His left arm went numb. Cold sweat ran down his forehead. The room began to spin. The papers slipped from his hands, fluttering through the air like white birds falling, and William collapsed over the bench. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Call an ambulance! Judge Reynolds! Officers rushed forward. The prosecutor grabbed her phone. Foster froze for a second before reacting. In the gallery, the grandmother clutched Emma tightly. No, sweetheart, stay here. But Emma broke free. She ran, her little legs carrying her down the central aisle of the courtroom. An officer tried to grab her, but she was faster. She dodged around the table, climbed onto the empty chair, and suddenly she was there, standing on the bench beside the fallen judge. "Someone get that child out of here!" But Emma already had William's hand in hers, her tiny fingers holding that large, cold hand. Then she placed something in it, a rosary, blue plastic beads, a small silver crucifix. Emma looked into William's eyes half closed. "The Virgin Mary will save you." Her voice was small but clear, steady, fearless. Two officers gently lifted her and carried her away. Her grandmother pulled her close, hugging her tightly, and that was when William felt it. Roses? The scent filled his senses like a wave. Fresh, sweet, impossible to ignore. But there were no roses in the room, no flowers, nothing. Heat radiated from his hands, from the palms where Emma had placed the rosary. A warmth that did not burn, but soothed, like slipping into warm water after hours in the cold. And peace. A peace William Reynolds hadn't felt in, how long, 10 years, 20, since before the divorce, since before Rebecca stopped talking to him. The pain was still there. Sharp, terrible, but something else was present too, something greater than the pain. The paramedics rushed in. Professional hands examined him. Technical words flew through the air. Pulse weak, but stable. Pressure dropping. Possible heart attack. We need to move him now. They placed him on a stretcher. William gripped the rosary tightly. He couldn't let go, even if he wanted to. As they wheeled him away, his eyes found Emma. The girl was in her grandmother's arms, watching, as if she knew something no one else did. The scent of roses vanished the moment they crossed the courthouse door. At the hospital, cardiology unit. Dr. Anderson looked at the scans, then at William, then back at the scans. How is he alive? The nurse had no answer. William was conscious, dazed but conscious. That alone was unusual. Dr. Anderson entered the room, 48 years old, seasoned cardiologist. He had seen a lot, but this. "Judge Reynolds, I'm Dr. Anderson. Can you hear me?" William nodded weakly. "You've suffered a heart attack, one of the largest I've ever seen in someone who made it here. The damage to the cardiac muscle is significant." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Given the extent of the damage, you shouldn't have survived transport. In fact, you shouldn't have remained conscious after the initial event. And yet, here you are." William tried to speak. His voice came out hoarse. "How long?" "We'll run more tests tomorrow. For now, you need to rest. But honestly, Judge Reynolds, I can't explain what I'm seeing." When the doctor left, William was alone with the sound of the monitors. Beep! 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 Each sound was his heart still beating. Against all odds, he looked at the nightstand beside his bed. His belongings were there: watch, wallet, and the blue rosary. William picked it up. The beads were light. But when he held it, something within him, a memory, a feeling. And for the first time in decades, William Reynolds prayed. He didn't know the right words, couldn't remember how he used to when he was a child. He just held that rosary and whispered, "If you're there, thank you." William was discharged 3 days later. The doctors didn't want to release him, thought it was too soon, but the tests were good, surprisingly good. "Your heart is recovering in a way I've never seen before," Dr. Anderson admitted. He paused. "Judge Reynolds, you're a very lucky man." At home, alone in that apartment that suddenly felt even emptier, William couldn't stop thinking. The size of the heart attack, the damage, the time before treatment. He shouldn't have survived. And yet. Unable to sleep, William opened his laptop, searched for the Rachel Miller case files. He should have been resting, recovering, but he couldn't get it out of his mind. He was about to read the sentence: 2 years in prison. It would have destroyed that woman, separated that child from her mother. What if? What if he had finished reading? William opened the full case file, every page, every testimony, every piece of evidence. He began to read. A week had passed. William was still on leave, but the Rachel Miller case wouldn't leave his mind. At 2 a.m, the apartment was drowned in silence. Except for the sound of pages turning, he felt something was wrong, something deep, like a silent voice whispering, "Look again." He grabbed the statement from the main witness, Marcus Thompson. The man swore he had seen Rachel tampering with the documents. William frowned. Wait. Among dozens of attachments, one date didn't match. Thompson said it was March 15th. But Rachel was in another state that day. He checked the receipt. It was real. A hospital. Her sick mother. William's heart began to race. Then why would he lie? William searched the man's name. Minor offenses. Nothing that justified a federal falsehood, unless someone had paid him. He picked up the phone and called an old contact, an investigator who owed him a few favors. "I need you to check something. Marcus Thompson. Finances from the past 6 months." 3 days later, the phone rang. "Found something, Judge. Deposit of $50,000 2 days after the testimony." William felt the blood drain from his face. 50,000, from whom? Still tracing it, but the source looks familiar. Another week passed. In the middle of the night, the phone rang again. "You sure you want to know?" "Speak." James Miller, the ex-husband. James Miller and Rachel had divorced 2 years earlier, shared custody of Emma. But James was angry. Rachel had kept the house, most of the assets. So he crafted a plan, and it had almost worked. If William had finished reading that verdict, Rachel would be in prison now. James would have full custody, an innocent woman. At 3 a.m, 2 weeks after his heart attack, William sat in his office. Papers scattered everywhere. Solid evidence that Rachel was innocent, that James had orchestrated it all. He held the blue rosary. He had started carrying it in his pocket. Didn't really know why. It just felt right. "Just a few more seconds," he whispered into the silence. If I had read a few more seconds of that sentence. His voice broke. 3 weeks after the heart attack, William called a hearing. News spread through the courthouse. Judge Reynolds returning so soon? The room was packed, more crowded than the first hearing. Emma and her grandmother sat in the same row as before. When William entered, something was different. People noticed, but couldn't quite tell what. He took his seat. A murmur rippled through the room. William spent the next hour presenting everything he had found. Meticulously, every contradiction in Thompson's testimony, every piece of evidence of James Miller's manipulation, every proof of Rachel's innocence. The prosecutor tried to object. "Your Honor, these allegations are serious but haven't been properly—" "They have been properly investigated by me, Prosecutor Hayes. And as the presiding judge on this case, I have the right to request a review when substantial irregularities are evident." And they are. He called Marcus Thompson to the stand. The man came reluctantly, sweating. "Mr. Thompson, how much did James Miller pay you to lie?" I didn't. $50,000. I have the bank records. The transfer was made 2 days after your testimony." The courtroom went dead silent. Thompson broke down, confessed everything. James Miller, sitting in the gallery, tried to leave, but officers were already blocking the doors. Rachel was crying, from relief, from shock, from disbelief at what was unfolding. William struck the gavel. "In light of the evidence presented, this court has no choice but to dismiss all charges against Rachel Miller. Mrs. Miller, you are completely exonerated." The room erupted in murmurs. "Furthermore," William continued, raising his voice, "I hereby issue an immediate arrest warrant for James Miller on charges of document tampering, perjury, and obstruction of justice. Officers. 2 guards escorted James out. He shouted, protested, but no one was listening. Emma ran to her mother. Rachel lifted her up, hugging her tightly, crying into her daughter's hair. And William watched. After everyone had left, William remained alone in his chambers. He touched the rosary in his pocket. He thought of that Thursday, the moment the pain struck him down, the scent of roses with no source, the warmth. Coincidence? Extreme medical luck? Or something more? William wasn't sure, and he realized he might never be, but he knew one thing. If he had read that sentence, if he hadn't collapsed, if he hadn't had those weeks of forced recovery to truly look at the case, Rachel would be in prison, Emma without a mother, and an injustice would have been done, and no one would ever know. Maybe the miracle wasn't just the heart that survived. 3 months passed. William was fully back at work, his courtroom, his hearings, his routine. But something was different. He was still strict, still demanded excellence from lawyers, still followed the law to the letter, but now he saw, really saw. The people on the defendant's bench, the faces in the gallery, the stories behind the papers. On a Sunday night, William was at home, alone, as always. But this time, he did something he hadn't done in 6 years. He picked up the phone, looked up Rebecca's number. His finger hovered over the call button for 10 full minutes. He took a deep breath, pressed it. 1 ring, 2, 3. Hello? Her voice was cautious. Rebecca. His voice came out hoarse. It's me, your father. Silence on the other end, so long that William thought she was going to hang up. I know I have no right to call like this after so long. But I had to try. Why now? Her voice was cold. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. It was tense, uncomfortable. Rebecca did not forgive him. She didn't say she wanted to see him, but as they were about to hang up, she said, Maybe we can talk again. I'm not promising anything, but maybe? William hung up and stared at the phone. It was a beginning, small, fragile, but it was something. He picked up the blue rosary, held it for a moment, looking at the simple plastic beads, an object that a 5-year-old child had placed in his hands at the worst moment of his life. And that had saved, what exactly? His life? Yes. But also something else, something William might not even have known he was losing until he found it again. The ability to see, to feel, to care, to be human. And not just righteous. And William Reynolds, for the first time in a very long while, didn't feel completely alone. Because now he knew, sometimes the greatest miracles aren't the ones that save your life. They're the ones that remind you why it's worth living. And look, if you made it this far, do one thing for me. Write in the comments, Blue Rosary, the object that saved a man at the most critical moment and showed him what truly mattered. I want to see how many hearts this story really touches. And every time I read Blue Rosary in the comments, I'll know that one more person believes that the miracles of the Virgin Mary still happen. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to renew their hope today. May the Virgin Mary continue to bless and protect you and your family. Amen.